Yes. We'll continue. HTML5 global attributes. There were some newly introduced global attributes that you can use on any element in HTML5. Access key, for example, allows mapping key shortcuts to elements. Content editable. Element content is editable for the user, so you can make any element editable. For example, a span or a div as well. It's the text that will be editable. Draggable, element can be dragged with drag and drop API. And hidden, the content of element should not be rendered. You also have other convenient attributes like the custom data attributes. So it's more or less a namespace for attributes. You can define your own attributes, data / product / ID, if you want to use your own attribute that you want to access, for example, while traversing the DOM. So it can be used to expose data from an HTML element, for example, to a script. Here is an example of 3 article elements with the data category attribute. So you can, the browser will ignore it more or less and just expose it in DOM and do nothing less with it. But you can access it from DOM traversals.
Why not just use class?
Sorry?
Why not just use some class?
You can use a class, but then it will also to select element. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, you can select them and inject them.
Yeah, you can do that. But then you get if you use a class element, you will typically get many elements.
It depends if you give the class too many comments.
Yeah, typically you use class elements for groups of elements and IDs for one specific element. But a class element can't hold data. The data attribute can. So here, data category has different values on different elements. But using class, you can't do that. So it's to provide data in HTML elements before you render the page, more or less, before the DOM is set. You can also assign new data elements with the JavaScript in the DOM after the page has been built in the DOM as well. I have typically used data attributes to give one nested element a state. Provide data, for example, provide data from the server renderer, like PHP or Node, and provide data which I want to utilize in my JavaScript application. Then I can pick up this data from the elements, and I know that this is related to a specific element. So it's quite useful. In HTML5, you were introduced to a few new input types in forms as well, and new means for input validation. Let's look into that. You have the email input type, URL input type, date input type, And by providing this kind of input types, instead of using text more or less for everything, input type text, you can use input type email. And then the browser or the client can validate that this is a valid email address for you. So it won't accept anything than a valid email address. And the browser can also provide specific GUI elements for these input types, so that it's easier for the user to select dates, for example, instead of typing it in the wrong format, for example. So with the date input type, you can tell the browser that this should only accept dates, and it should accept dates on a specific format. Then the browser, this input field is rendered completely by the browser. It's not any jQuery GUI or something like that. This is rendered by the browser. And it provides a date selector for the user to easier pick the dates that he wants. They also have a number and a range input type, which gives you a slider to easier pick numbers between 0 to 10, for example, if you define that as the range. You have a color input type. And this is also the browser handling the input field and handling the color picker. And progress meter, for example. But remember that all these input types aren't fully supported by all the browsers still. All the major browsers have implemented this, but you have still some legacy issues with older browsers. Typically, we support browsers down to Internet Explorer 9 at the moment, and everything before that we just ignore. If not, the client have something to say about that and needs, or have specifically said that it won't have support for browsers lower than that. There's something, Microsoft started auto updating their browsers after Internet Explorer 9. So there are very few users left on Internet Explorer 9. Most of them are either on Internet Explorer 11 or on the Edge browser. So maybe we could skip 9 and 10 as well in the future, in next year maybe. We'll see. But typically, Chrome and Firefox, Opera, these browsers auto updates. So you more or less always have an updated browser. They ask you to update the browser quite frequently. Okay, HTML5 forms attributes. You have attributes like autofocus. This means that the browser should focus on this input field at document load. That means that the cursor, input cursor, will blink on that input field if it's a text field. A placeholder, that's a placeholder text which disappears whenever you're starting editing. So if I write something here, it will disappear. Typically there you put your input labels if you want to label these input fields. For example, if you want to say that here we want a name, we want an email, you put the name in the placeholder text, and whenever the user starts writing it, it's he or she as a user understands that it's a name that should be input. You can have patterns that regular expressions to define valid patterns of input. You have autocomplete for auto-completing text input, and so on. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, CSS level 3. There won't be much time to a workshop, I think. This took a little more time than I initially thought, but CSS level 3. Divided into separate documents called modules, all of which have different statuses. These are examples of CSS3 modules, like CSS3 background. It's a module that defines CSS backgrounds and borders module. It's a level 3 candidate recommendation of September 2014. I think it's probably a V3C recommendation. And CSS tree box, CSS cascade tree, CSS tree color, several different modules. You can look into them on these references that I've provided in the slides. Okay. Media queries. Media queries in HTML and CSS. Context-aware styling of elements. And what could a context be in this? In CSS?
Display size?
Yes, display size. That's one example. Visibility. And here we have orientation, for example, for tablets, mobiles, and so on. Portrait orientation. Another context can be print media or display media. These are different contexts. So you can define rules in CSS based on a context. Okay, this rule applies only for screen sizes less than 900 pixel width. You can define several different queries for these kinds of utilization. And that is what you use when you build responsive websites. You use media queries to define which rules should apply at which screen size. You see? So you can hide, for example, elements on small screen sizes. And you can say that the elements should be placed besides each other in a large screen and maybe after each other in the horizontal direction on a small screen. Okay, CSS tree selectors. When you start writing CSS, you use IDs to select on, and you use classes to select on. Am I right? Mostly, yeah. You have a lot of selectors and a lot of ways to select specific elements that you want to apply rules on. For example, E here, that's then you select all the elements of E. For example, span. Or E with bracket foo. Then you select all E elements with an attribute foo. The attribute should only be present. If the attribute equals bar, the value of the attribute is bar, then these are selected and so on and so on. So you have a lot of rules here. Let's look at some complex rules. We talked about nth child, if you remember that. You have a lot of these sub-selectors if you want to select all elements of type E, that is first child of its ancestor. Then you use E first child. Yes, one question here. E first child. Can we do that with E nth child? N.
Yeah.
Yeah, how?
En child 1.
Yes, or 0, I think.
Yeah, 0. Yeah, the index.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Try it out, and then you'll see. Either 0 or 1, but I think it's 0.
It's 0.
Yeah. Yes. So a lot of selectors of different kinds. You can look into this yourself. If we nest elements like span and div, then we pick all the div. Oh, sorry, the other way around. Div and span. Then we pick all the spans that is descendants of a div somewhere in the tree. Okay, but we could also pick direct childs of an element. So if we have div and span, then that is only the spans that are direct childs of a div element. And you can have siblings as well with plus and tilde. CSS tree selectors. Yes. I have to take these slides into the next lecture because I haven't got time to do them now. But if you click on this link, you get a separate set of slides that goes a little bit deeper into HTML5, CSS3, and related technologies. Okay. We'll move on to ECMAScript 5. First of all, ECMA 5 has a JSON API, and JSON, of course, that's a very popular serialization format for objects. And ECMAScript 5 provides means for serializing and deserializing JSON with JSON.parse and JSON.stringify. Let's look at standards in progress. HTML 5.1 and 5.2. This is the plan of V3C. I won't go into detail there. You can read it yourself. HTML 5.1 actively pursues conversion with WHATWG living standard. Because HTML5 is handled, or what's VG is an interest group that started the work with HTML5. If you remember what I talked about last time we met. And WhatWigi is still very much involved in the implementation and the development of HTML5 in the future. But V3C and WhatVG have different opinions on how the development of the specification should be done. WhatVG have a living standard. You can think of it as a standard that is always evolving. No semantic versioning with 5.1 and 5.2. No versions of the of the standard. It's constantly evolving, typically with nightly builds, that they build the specification and always have the specification as is fresh and new. Whilst V3C is this large organization that has their standardization process that I've already talked about with candidate recommendation and proposed recommendations and V3C recommendations and working drafts and all this stuff, you see? And a specification in V3C is only a specification, an official specification when it's a V3C recommendation. But what we want the HTML specification to evolve all the time, not at specific times when you say that this is a recommendation. You can find the WhatWG HTML living standard on a link that I provided. HTML 5.2. These are unstable features of HTML 5.1, and proposed features may be included in the HTML 5.2 draft. Working draft will probably be present in early 2015. Okay, what will happen with CSS level 4, or selectors level 4, which is the only current level 4 module working draft. So there are only one module in the level 4 specification of CSS still. It provides new selectors, and you can look into them if you want to by following this link. Okay, ECMAScript 6. It's scheduled for release in 2015. The 6th edition adds significant new syntax for writing complex applications, including you have a class construct in JavaScript with ECMAScript 6. So you can define classes in typical patterns, as you know from Java and PHP, for example. There are a lot of different new features in ECMA 6. I won't go into detail there either. You can look into the article that I've provided, so you can see what ECMA 6 provides. There are experimental features that are supported by some of the browsers. So typically, if you want to implement ECMA 6 now, if you want to start using it now and learning it now, you need some kind of transpiler. And one example of a transpiler for ECMA 6 is Babel.js. So if you want to touch and feel ECMA 6, you can use Babel to transpile ECMA 6 to ECMA 5 so that it works in your browser. Okay, what's going to happen with HTTP? We have the new HTTP 2 specification, and that has become an official specification. The next version of the HTTP protocol, what we're typically using now in our browser is HTTP 1.1, but this is the next version. It's based on the Speedy protocol, which was developed by Google. And it provides a lot of useful features, actually. For example, negotiating mechanism that allows clients and servers to elect to use 1.1 or 2.0 or potentially other non-HTTP protocols. So you can the client and the server can negotiate this, and yeah. You can maintain high-level similarity with HTTP 1.1. For example, with methods, you can use the same methods, the same status codes and URIs, and etc. It will decrease latency to improve page load speed within web browsers by considering data compression of HTTP headers, so it supports compression of these. Server push technologies. If one web server knows that this web application also needs this, is dependent on this and this and this resource, like an image or another HTML page or something like that, it can start pushing them to the client before the client requests them. You see? And then you can decrease latency, because if you don't do this, you have to go through the request response cycle for all these elements. Instead, the server can push these elements without having a request from the client. You see? Fixing the head of line blocking problem in HTTP 1. Loading page element in parallel over a single TCP connection. And it supports common existing use cases of HTTP, such as desktop web browser, mobile web browsers, web APIs, etc. So it's built upon HTTP 1.1 and extended this with a lot of new features. You can look into this intro if you want to dig into HTTP 2. Yes. Any questions to the coming technologies? You see that there are a lot of things that we could have picked into in this course, but it's difficult because there are a lot of specifications, a lot of technologies that we have to get familiar with. So getting completely familiar with these technologies, it's up to you, very much up to you. I just provide you with the details on what these technologies can do, and then you work with these technologies in the workshops that I provide and the exercises that I provide. Any questions? Okay. So we don't have much time for the workshop, so I will introduce you to it, and then you work with this at home. Okay? There are some relevant tools that you need to install, first of all. Node.js. We'll try to set up Node.js servers. You get, with Node.js, you get NPM, that's Node Package Manager, for managing packets, modules, and dependencies between these modules. So typically you install extensions or modules with the NPM. We will also use these are state-of-the-art tools and software that is used a lot by the web community. We will also use Bower, that's a front-end package manager. Instead of downloading all the, like jQuery and all the frameworks we want to use in our awesome web app, we install them with Bower, so that Bower can handle the dependencies between the packages and so on. We'll use Grunt as an automation tool. It uses a JavaScript config, so it will be familiar as soon as you're familiar with JavaScript. And Yeoman for scaffolding web apps. And by scaffolding, I mean automation of setting up a web app for you. Instead of we writing the first HTML document and linking to the JavaScript files that we want to manually, Yeoman just wraps this up for you and build it how you should build a web app, for example. These are installation instructions. Are you familiar with the command line? Some of you? To use these tools, you have to become familiar with the command line. Okay? There are quite easy commands I will give you. If you will build your apps, if you're very familiar with another platform, any other than Node, if you want to build your web app with a Java-based server application of some kind, or you want to build it with Python or any other language, it's up to you. I will just give you examples for this workshop and other workshops in Node, so that we use JavaScript for both the server and the client. But if we want to set up a Node application, we have to, first of all, installation instructions, we have to install Node.js first, and then we get npm with that installation. And npm provides a CLI, command line interface. So you get commands for installing modules. If you use the -g flag in npm CLI, then you install global attributes. Those can npm or Node use anywhere in your structure on your machine. Okay? If you don't use -g, you will install a module locally. That means in the folder that you are at the moment when you write the command. Typically, some of the CLI tools that are built upon Node.js, like Bower and Grunt CLI, are installed globally. That's why I use npm install -g Bower, for example. Because also Bower provides a CLI. First of all, we install Bower, then we install Grunt, then we install the Grunt CLI, that's the command line interface for Grunt. Then we install Yeoman, and then we install a generator for Yeoman, because Yeoman needs recipes to know how to scaffold a web app. So you provide these recipes by installing them through npm. Generator web app will fire up a web app with the Node.js backend and an Angular frontend, I think. You can also write any other JavaScript if you want to on that web app. You're not completely dependent on Angular. Let's see if I can do this, just to show you in practice. Okay, we'll keep that like this. As I said, if you want to build your web apps now based on a different platform than Node.js, it's up to you. You can do that. I won't force you into using Node.js, but many of the workshops I will give you examples from Node.js. Okay? Let's see if you can do this. npm, I suppose I have Bower before from before, but npm install -g bower. Okay, then npm node package manager installed bower as a global package. And it resolves all dependencies also. If bower is dependent on different other modules, it will install them as well, and it will resolve the dependencies between these modules. Then we needed grunt. I think I have that as well. Yes. And then we need grunt CLI. And then we need yeoman. Oh. That I didn't have. Yes. Then I need the generator for my web app. npm install -g generator web app. That worked fine. And then we'll go over to this command line. Yes, okay. Now I can either do yo, and then yo gives me some very nice UI here to select those generators I want to use, or I can do yo web app. And then Yeoman gives me some choices of what I want to have in my web app. Maybe I want to use Sus to have a CSS pre-processor. If you have any of you tried Sus or less? These are pre-processors that builds upon CSS and it gives you a lot of new features so that you can write more awesome and easier CSS. You have Bootstrap. I suppose many of you had Bootstrap in your project. That's a framework for responsive web apps and different other GUI thingies. And Modernizer, which is a script that handles several different legacy issues in web browsers. So let's just install all of this. What Yeoman is doing now, first of all, it's installing the dependencies that I need to have a proper web app. And then it's scaffolding my folder structure that I need in this web app. So it handles where you, or it sets up your code folder, it sets up your distribution folder if you want to build your code and put it into some distribution folder to publish it on some kind of web server or something, and it builds, sets up a lot of nice to have files in a web application and so on and so on. So it gives you a lot of things free, more or less. so that you don't have to think think about these things yourself whenever you're setting up your web application. Did anyone try it now, or?
I'm running it for that.
So yeah. Did you have problems with setting up?
Yes, permissions.
Yeah, that's typical.
Use sudo.
It happens.
Sudo.
Sudo doesn't work.
Pseudo it all.
Fix it. Fix it.
Typically, it should be resolved if you shown or if you set other permissions to your node modules folder. But try to Google these things. If you find any issues by when you're installing these tools, then try to Google how to resolve them, because then you get the best advices to how to solve it. Instead of soothing everything, because then you get a mess. In the end, you get a mess. Yes. What I have now, I have Grunt up and running, so I can use Grunt to serve my web app. For example, Grunt serve. Then I suppose it should wire it up here, and then it have scaffolded my web app, and we're up and running. Hello, hello. Okay. What if I want to start coding? Okay, I need to go to the Sublime. Because we get some nice tools here. For example, it provides you with live reload. Have you tried live reload? Huh? No? Yes? If I edit something in my app here, index HTML, Grunt is now watching my files, so it live reloads everything that I write here. So it's quite easy to sit and develop in this kind of environment. My nice project. So, and it also listens to my script files, so I can maybe do something like and it's instantly reloads the page as you develop. So it's quite convenient to use this. And this was scaffolded by Yeoman. Yeoman set it up. It installed live reload for you. It installed a mini web server that is hosted on localhost. A tiny web server written in Node that is hosting these files for development purposes. Also, you can, of course, work with your style files as well. This is SCSS, so yeah. If you see something that you don't understand here, it's not so. It's okay. Yes. Okay. So for the purpose of developing the web apps that we want, this is quite a nice way to work with web apps. If you get it up and running. As I said, if you want to serve these files and write them manually, put it on your web server, build your web app on any other platform, it's up to you. Okay, you can do that. It's no problem. As long as you solve these problems that I provide you in the workshop. And the problem for today is this. We're going to make a simple responsive list of Instagram images and a list of who has liked these images by using the Instagram REST API. Okay? So we're going to use Bootstrap as a responsive framework. If you want to set it up manually, you can do that, or you can use this web app tool with Yeoman. The web app we set up should be scaffolded, it doesn't have to be, as I said. It could be scaffolded using Yeoman and the web app generator. But before you can talk to Instagram, before you can do requests to the Instagram API, you have to have a user, first of all, and you have to use this link to set up an API client. And you often have to do that to communicate with these services. Like Google services, you have to have an API client. For Facebook services, you have to have an API client and so on. So you register a new API client, authorize requests from localhost if you want to run your server on localhost, and then you're up and running and can do requests to Instagram and get the information from there. Any questions? I also have a guide. You can read through that. Okay? Questions? Oh?
When we should do this at home?
Yeah. During this week.
And then we will show you next lecture?
No. It won't show me anything. It's up to you. It's for your own sake.
Okay.
So you develop this for yourself to try to get into these technologies. Okay? If you have any questions, you can email me and ask me anything about this workshop. But of course, I strongly recommend you to do these workshops. It's quite useful. Yes? That's it for today. Thank you.